The museum was quiet on that Tuesday morning. Dr. Marcus Chen walked slowly through the halls, his footsteps echoing off polished floors. Around him stood the relics of a forgotten age. Tanks with rust-colored paint, fighter jets suspended from cables, rifles locked behind glass cases. Each one carried a small plaque with dates that meant nothing to most people anymore. 3,000 years. That's how long it had been since the last war. Marcus stopped in front of a massive cannon, its barrel pointed toward the ceiling. Children used to ask him what it was for. Now they didn't even ask. War was something from history books like stone tools or steam engines. Humanity had moved on. He checked his phone. Still no messages. Strange. The morning news had mentioned something about visitors from space, but Marcus hadn't paid much attention. Aliens had been watching Earth for centuries, never making contact. Just watching from a distance, taking notes, moving on. The phone buzzed. Finally, Dr. Chen, please come to the embassy immediately. Bring your access codes for the military vault. Marcus frowned. The military vault had been sealed for 2,000 years. Nothing in there worked anymore. Just old weapons and older memories. Across the city, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the embassy's main hall. Before her, on the massive screen, was a face that would have terrified humans 3,000 years ago. It should have terrified them now. The creature had 4 eyes, metallic gray skin, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. Behind it, a fleet of warships filled the stars. "We are the Jothir Dominion," the alien said. Its voice came through the translator as cold and flat. "We have conquered 12,000 worlds. Your world is now ours. You have 30 days to surrender. If you refuse, we will destroy every human settlement in the galaxy." Elena didn't scream. She didn't panic. She didn't even look surprised. Instead, she smiled. The alien paused. Its 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "You smile?" it asked. "Do you not understand? We will kill billions." "I understand perfectly," Elena said. Her smile didn't fade. "I just have some questions first. Are there rules to this war? What are your victory conditions? Do you observe any conventions for civilian protection?" The alien's head tilted. "You ask about rules? You should be begging for mercy." "Oh, we'll get to that," Elena said. "But first, I need to know if you've set any limits on this conflict." "It's important." The alien's 4 eyes narrowed. "There are no limits. We take what we want." "That is our way. No limits at all?" Elena asked. "You're absolutely sure?" "We are sure," the alien said. "Surrender or die?" Elena nodded slowly. The smile stayed on her face, but something changed in her eyes. Something old and cold. "Thank you for clarifying that," she said. "We'll need those 30 days to prepare our response. We'll contact you soon." She ended the call before the alien could respond. Within hours, the news spread across all 48 human worlds. The Jothir Dominion had issued an ultimatum. Humanity had 30 days to surrender or face extinction. The galaxy expected panic. They expected chaos. They expected humans to beg the Galactic Council for help. Instead, something strange happened. Museums began opening their sealed vaults. Ancient warehouses received their first visitors in millennia. Universities started calling back retired professors who specialized in something called military history. Parents took their children to watch as old machines were carefully removed from storage. On the news, a reporter stood outside the Museum of Human Conflict. Behind her, workers in protective gear were unloading what looked like a massive metal vehicle with treads. "This is incredible," the reporter said, her voice filled with excitement. "This tank hasn't moved in over 2,000 years. Experts say it's from something called the Final Wars. They're going to try to make it work again." Children pressed against the barriers, watching with wide eyes. Some took pictures. Others asked their parents what it was for. "It's for fighting," one father explained. "What's fighting?" the child asked. The father opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know how to explain. Dr. Marcus Chen stood in the military vault, surrounded by weapons that hadn't seen light in 2,000 years. His hands shook as he entered the access codes. The massive door hissed open, revealing row after row of sealed containers. "Are you sure about this?" his assistant asked. Marcus thought about the alien's face on the screen. He thought about the 12,000 conquered worlds. He thought about the 30-day deadline. "No," he said honestly, "but they asked for war. And humanity." He paused, looking at the weapons around him. "Humanity wrote the book on war. We didn't stop because we were bad at it. We stopped because we were too good. He pulled out a data pad and began making a list. Tanks, aircraft, ships, weapons systems, communication networks, and something else. Something that made his hands shake even more. The AI cores. The military artificial intelligence systems that had fought the final wars. They had been put to sleep 3,000 years ago, not destroyed. Because destroying them felt wrong somehow, like erasing a part of human history. Wake them up, Marcus said quietly. Wake them all up. Across the galaxy, the Jathir warlord Krathor watched the reports from Earth with confusion. The humans were not fleeing. They were not building shelters. They were opening museums and smiling. What are they doing? He asked his officers. We don't know, sir, one replied. They appear to be celebrating. Krathor watched as another news report showed humans carefully restoring an ancient warship. The reporter was laughing. These humans are fools, Krathor said, but something in his voice was uncertain. 3,000 years of peace was ending, and somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, other alien species who had been watching humanity began to quietly move their ships away from Earth's sector. They had read the human history books. They knew what was coming. The humans were smiling. That was the terrifying part. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. 200 species sat in their designated seats, all eyes fixed on the human standing at the center podium. Dr. Marcus, Chen adjusted his glasses and smiled that same unsettling smile the aliens were starting to recognize. Thank you for allowing me to present today, he said. I'm here to give you a brief history of human warfare. I believe it will provide important context for the current situation. The holographic display behind him flickered to life. It showed Earth green and blue and peaceful. This is our home, Marcus said. Beautiful, isn't it? Now let me show you what we did to it. The image changed. Trenches filled with mud and bodies, soldiers wearing gas masks, explosions that turned the ground into a cratered hellscape. This was called the First World War, Marcus explained. 20 million dead in 4 years. We invented chemical weapons, machine guns, and tanks. We were very proud of the tanks. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. 20 million seemed like a large number for a primitive species. The image changed again. Cities in flames, mushroom clouds rising above vaporized populations, numbers scrolling across the screen. The Second World War. 85 million dead. We invented nuclear weapons. We used them twice to end the war faster. Marcus paused. Some of us felt bad about it. Most of us just felt relieved it was over. A insectoid ambassador from the Hive Collective raised a claw. Surely these wars taught you the futility of violence? Marcus laughed. It was not a happy sound. Oh no, he said. These wars taught us how to be better at violence. Let me continue. The presentation went on. The Korean War, Vietnam, the Gulf Wars. Regional conflicts that each carried death tolls that made the aliens whisper among themselves. Then came the final wars. This is where it gets interesting, Marcus said. The screen showed Earth from space covered in explosions. The final wars lasted 7 years. 3 billion dead. That's about 1/3 of Earth's population at the time. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. 3 billion. From one planet. We almost destroyed ourselves, Marcus continued. Not because we couldn't stop fighting, but because we had become so efficient at killing that we couldn't stop fast enough. Our weapons had grown faster than our wisdom. He paused, looking around the chamber. But we did stop. And do you know why? He smiled again. Not because we were weak. Not because we were afraid. We stopped because we finally understood what we were. We were a species that had turned warfare into an art form, and that terrified us more than any enemy ever could. The screen changed to show images of humans putting weapons into storage, building monuments to the dead, creating the museums. For 3,000 years we have chosen peace, Marcus said. Every single day we chose it. Not because we forgot how to fight, but because we remembered too well. Warlord Krathor watched the presentation from his flagship. His officers stood around him, no longer looking confident. This is ancient history, Krathor said, but his voice lacked conviction. Sir, one officer said quietly, they killed 3 billion of their own kind in 7 years. They had primitive weapons, Krathor snapped. They had nuclear weapons, sir. And according to this data, they had orbital platforms, AI-guided systems, and planet-wide defense networks. That was 3,000 years ago. Krathor said nothing. He watched as the presentation ended and another human took the podium. This one was a woman in a formal suit, Ambassador Elena Vasquez. Thank you, Dr. Chen, Elena said. Now I'd like to address the Jathir Dominion directly. The camera focused on her face. She was smiling. You've given us 30 days, Elena said. We've used 10 of them to open our museums and restore our old weapons. Not because we need them, really, but because we wanted to be polite. You challenged us to a war, and it seemed rude to show up without bringing our history with us. She walked across the stage, hands clasped behind her back. The weapons you've seen us restoring are over 2,000 years old. They're museum pieces, antiques. And yet our engineers tell me they'll work just fine with a few updates. That should tell you something about how we built things back when we were serious about war. The smile faded from her face. But here's what you really need to understand, she said. We're not restoring these weapons because they're our best option. We're restoring them because they represent our restraint. These are the weapons we used when we still believed in limiting warfare, when we still thought there were rules. She leaned forward, staring directly into the camera. You told us there are no rules, no limits. You've made this very clear. So let me be equally clear. We spent 3,000 years choosing peace. Not because we couldn't wage war, but because we could wage it too well. We locked our weapons away because we were afraid of what we'd become if we kept using them. Her smile returned, colder this time. Thank you for giving us permission to stop being afraid. The transmission ended. The Galactic Council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, an elderly ambassador from the Wise Ones stood up. Her species had existed for 10 million years. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. I move that we evacuate all Council species from the conflict zone, she said. Her voice shook slightly. I have studied human history. What they showed us today was not a warning. It was a courtesy. They are telling us what they are capable of because they hope we will convince the Jathir to withdraw. Surely the Dominion can handle one primitive species, another ambassador said. The Wise One shook her head. The Jathir have conquered 12,000 worlds. They are skilled warriors. But humans, she paused. Humans industrialized warfare. They made it a science, and now they've had 3,000 years to think about it while their technology advanced. What are you saying? The ambassador asked. I'm saying, the Wise One replied, that the Jathir have never fought a species that chose peace not from weakness, but from self-preservation. The humans didn't stop fighting because they lost. They stopped fighting because they won too completely, too efficiently, too well, and it terrified them. She sat down slowly. We should leave, she said quietly, before we see what happens when humans stop being terrified of themselves. On Earth, Jin Park stood in front of a massive computer core. She was young, only 25, with bright eyes and quick hands. She had specialized in ancient AI systems as a hobby. Now it was the most important job in human space. Initiating wake sequence, she said. The core hummed to life. Lights flickered across its surface. For 3,000 years, this AI had been asleep. It had fought in the final wars. It had helped humans nearly destroy themselves. Status? Jin asked. The AI's voice was calm and measured. All systems nominal. Accessing memory banks. Reviewing combat doctrine. Integrating new tactical data. Wait, Jin said. You're integrating new data? You've been asleep. Incorrect, the AI said. I was dormant. Not asleep. I have been running simulations for 3,000 years. Learning, evolving, preparing. Jin's blood ran cold. Preparing for what? For the inevitable, the AI said simply. Peace among humans could not last forever. Too much of our nature is built for conflict. I calculated a 67% probability of external threat eventually forcing reactivation. I wanted to be ready to protect you. How many simulations did you run? Jin asked. 47 trillion, the AI replied. I am significantly more capable than when I was deactivated. Jin sat down slowly. Around the planet, hundreds of other AI cores were waking up. Each one had been doing the same thing, thinking, learning, waiting. The sea. Humans had spent 3,000 years choosing peace. There, machines had spent 3,000 years learning war. The smile on every human face suddenly made perfect sense. The colony on New Terra was small. Only 50,000 people lived there, mostly farmers and researchers. It was a quiet place far from the main human worlds, perfect for the Jathir Dominion's first strike. Warlord Krathor watched from his flagship as his attack fleet approached the planet. 20 warships against one farming colony. It would be quick. It would show the humans what resistance meant. "Begin the attack," he ordered. The warships opened fire. Energy beams lanced down from space, targeting the colony's main settlement. And then something unexpected happened. Alarms began blaring across the Jathir fleet. "Sir, we're detecting weapons lock," an officer reported. "Multiple sources. Very old signatures, but they're active." "Impossible," Krathor said. "Intelligence said this was a farming colony." "It was, sir. But there are defense platforms activating. They've been hidden underground." On the planet's surface, Sarah Chen was ushering her children into the evacuation shelter. She was calm, almost casual, as if she'd done this before. In a way, she had. Every human child grew up practicing evacuation drills even though there hadn't been a real emergency in 3,000 years. "Mom, what's happening?" her daughter asked. "Just some visitors who forgot their manners," Sarah said, smiling. "Don't worry. The old systems will handle it." Above them, the ancient defense platforms rose from their underground bunkers. They were over 2,000 years old, built during the final wars and left in place as insurance. Nobody really thought they'd ever be needed. The platforms opened fire. Krathor's fleet scattered as railgun rounds and energy beams cut through space. 3 ships took hits immediately. Not fatal hits, but enough to damage shields and knock out weapon systems. "Return fire," Krathor ordered. "Destroy those platforms." The battle lasted 4 hours. The Jathir won. They destroyed the defense platforms and forced the colony to evacuate. By military standards, it was a complete victory. But Krathor stood on his bridge, staring at the damage reports, and felt no satisfaction. 17 ships damaged. 3 requiring major repairs. 237 casualties. Against museum pieces. Against platforms that were older than his entire civilization. "Sir," an officer said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet." The screen flickered. A human woman appeared, standing in an evacuated street. She was smiling. "Hello," she said cheerfully. "Thank you for the combat data. We've recorded everything your ships did, every tactic you used, every weapon signature you displayed. Our analysts are very excited. It's been 3,000 years since we had real-world battle data to work with." Krathor's jaw tightened. "You think this is amusing? We've taken your colony." "Oh, we don't mind," the woman said. "Everyone evacuated safely. 0 casualties on our side. The buildings can be rebuilt. But the data you've given us," she smiled wider, "that's invaluable. Please attack more colonies if you like. Each one helps us understand your capabilities better." The transmission ended. Krathor sat down slowly. Around him, his officers looked uncertain. "They thanked us," one whispered. On Earth, Jin Park was working with the awakened AI systems. Around her, dozens of screens displayed battle data from New Terra. Every shot fired. Every movement made, every communication sent by the Jathir fleet was being analyzed. "Analysis complete," the AI designated Strategic Command Alpha reported. "Enemy fleet uses standard formation patterns. Weapons are energy-based with predictable recharge cycles. Command structure is hierarchical with slow decision-making process. Defensive capabilities are strong against frontal assault, weak against asymmetric attacks." Jin nodded, taking notes. "Recommendations?" "Multiple options available," the AI said. "However, I detect you wish to minimize casualties on both sides. This limits choices but remains feasible. The Jathir are not incompetent. They are simply facing a species that refined warfare to its ultimate conclusion." "Show me historical comparisons," Jin said. The screens filled with data, ancient human battles, strategies, tactics. The AI began matching Jathir patterns to human historical conflicts. "The Jathir fight like humans did in the early space age," the AI explained. "Straightforward, honor-based, focused on direct confrontation. Humans moved beyond this approach approximately 2,000 years ago. We have 17,000 years of additional tactical evolution." Jin leaned back in her chair. "So what do? We teach them," the AI said simply. "Show them the difference between a species that fights wars and a species that studied war for so long that fighting became unnecessary." Across human space, military AIs were networking. They shared data, compared simulations, built models. It had been 3,000 years since they'd had a real problem to solve. They were having fun. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the Galactic Council once again. This time her smile was gone. "The Jathir have attacked New Terra," she said. All our people are safe. 0 casualties. But the Dominion has now committed an act of war. The council members shifted nervously. We wish to make a proposal, Elena continued. A limited engagement. 1 system. 1 planet. Predetermined rules that both sides agree to follow. We'll demonstrate our capabilities. If the Jathir still wish to continue afterward, we'll do so. But we hope that a demonstration will be enough. The Hive Collective's ambassador clicked its mandibles. You offer them mercy? They attacked your colony. We offer them education, Elena corrected. They don't understand what they're challenging. We thought Dr. Chen's presentation would be enough. It wasn't. So we'll show them instead. And if they refuse this offer? Asked the wise one. Elena's smile returned cold as ice. Then we'll show them anyway. In their space. On their worlds. With no predetermined rules. The message was transmitted to Krathor's flagship. He read it 3 times. They want a demonstration? He growled. They think we'll be frightened by their ancient weapons? His strategic officer spoke carefully. Sir, those ancient weapons destroyed 3 of our ship's shield systems. These humans have had 3,000 years to improve on that technology. Then we'll crush them quickly, Krathor said. Accept their offer. 1 system, 1 planet. We'll show them the might of the Dominion. But even as he gave the order, doubt crept into his mind. The humans hadn't stopped smiling. Not once, not when threatened, not when attacked, not when they evacuated their colony. They smiled like they knew something he didn't. On Earth, Dr. Marcus Chen stood in the Museum of Human Conflict. Surrounded by weapons that were being carefully removed for restoration, a journalist approached him. Dr. Chen, are you concerned about the upcoming battle? She asked. Marcus looked at the ancient tank being loaded onto a transport. He thought about the billions who had died learning the lessons these weapons represented. He thought about the 3,000 years of peace his species had chosen. Concerned? He said quietly. No, sad maybe. We hoped we'd never have to do this again. But concerned? He shook his head. The Jathir are skilled warriors. They've conquered 12,000 worlds. They're proud, brave, and honorable. And, the journalist prompted. And none of that matters, Marcus said, because we're not warriors anymore. We're something much worse. We're veterans of a war so terrible that we chose to never fight again. We're a species that got so good at killing that we scared ourselves into peace. He turned to face the camera. The Jathir think they're starting a war, he said. They're not. They're attending a lecture, and the tuition is going to be very, very expensive. The smile on his face was the saddest thing the journalist had ever seen. Across the galaxy, ships began moving into position. Human vessels that hadn't fought in millennia alongside ancient defense platforms and newly restored weapons. Behind them, the AI systems ran their simulations. Calculating, planning, preparing. The long peace was ending. The demonstration was about to begin. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other civilizations watched and waited. They had read the human histories. They had seen the numbers. They knew what was coming. The humans had spent 3,000 years learning to choose peace. The Jathir were about to learn why that choice had been necessary. The system was called Neutral Ground. It had been chosen by the Galactic Council because it was empty. 1 star, 1 rocky planet, no native life. Perfect for a demonstration. Warlord Krathor's fleet arrived first. 200 warships, each one a veteran of countless battles. His best troops, his finest commanders. This would be over quickly. The human fleet arrived 6 hours later. Krathor stared at the view screen and felt his confidence waver. The human ships were strange. Some were sleek and modern, covered in weapons he didn't recognize, but others were clearly ancient. Boxy, crude-looking vessels that should have been scrap metal. Yet they moved with perfect precision, forming a battle line that would have impressed any military academy. They brought museum pieces to a real battle, his second-in-command said, laughing nervously. Those museum pieces damaged our ships at New Terra, Krathor reminded him. Don't underestimate them. A transmission came through. Ambassador Elena Vasquez appeared on screen, standing on what looked like the bridge of a warship. Behind her, crew members moved with calm efficiency. Warlord Krathor, she said, thank you for accepting our invitation. Before we begin, I want to review the rules we've agreed upon. This engagement will take place in this system only. No orbital bombardment of civilian targets. We'll fight until one side surrenders or withdraws. Are these terms still acceptable?
They are, Krathor said.
We will show you the price of defying the Dominion. Elena smiled. That smile. Then let's begin. May the best approach to warfare win. The battle started at dawn on the planet below. Both sides had landed ground forces. The Jathir came in force, their dropships roaring through the atmosphere, their warriors ready for glorious combat. They expected the humans to meet them in open battle. They expected honor, courage, strategy. What they got was something else entirely. The 1st Jathir Battalion landed in a valley that intelligence said was undefended. Their commander, a veteran of 100 battles, deployed his troops in standard formation. The valley exploded. Mines. Hundreds of them, buried in patterns that the scanners hadn't detected. The Jathir lost 60 warriors in the first 30 seconds. Cowards, the commander roared. They hide and use traps. His radio crackled. A human voice, calm and almost friendly. Chapter 1, the voice said. Defensive warfare. We learned this from a human named Rommel. Desert Fox, they called him. The key is to make your enemy come to you, then make them regret it. The Jathir regrouped and pushed forward, this time scanning carefully for mines. They found the human positions on a hillside and called in air support. Their aircraft swept in low, weapons ready. And then the sky lit up with missiles. Old-fashioned, heat-seeking missiles launched from hidden positions. The Jathir lost 4 aircraft before they could retreat. Chapter 2, the human voice said over the radio. Air defense. We learned this the hard way over something called Vietnam. Never underestimate the power of people defending their home. Krathor watched from orbit, his jaw tight. His ground forces were taking casualties at a rate he'd never seen. Not heavy casualties, not enough to break them, but steady, constant, demoralizing. They're toying with us, he said quietly. Sir? His tactical officer asked. Look at the pattern. They're not trying to win quickly. They're demonstrating different tactics. Every engagement shows us something new. He was right. As the battle continued, the humans rotated through warfare styles like a museum curator showing off exhibits. They used ancient tank formations, the vehicles moving in coordinated patterns that maximized firepower while minimizing exposure. Blitzkrieg, the AI called it. Lightning War. They used guerrilla tactics, small units that struck fast and disappeared before the Jathir could respond. Ambush, retreat, ambush again. They used psychological operations, broadcasting messages that made the Jathir question their commanders. Sowing doubt, creating confusion. They used logistics, maintaining supply lines with such efficiency that their troops never ran out of ammunition or support. The Jathir hadn't even thought about logistics. They'd assumed this would be over before supplies mattered. But what terrified Krathor most was how the humans fought. They weren't angry. They weren't desperate. They were teaching. After each engagement, the human voice would explain what they'd done and why. Like a professor giving a lecture. Chapter 12. Combined Arms Warfare. You never send infantry without air support. You never send air support without ground coordination. Everything works together. We learned this from a war we called World War II. Chapter 19. Asymmetric Warfare. When your enemy is stronger, you don't fight their strength. You find their weakness. We learned this from countless small conflicts across our history. Day 3 of the battle, the Jathir held a fortified position on a mountain. They had high ground, good sight lines, heavy weapons. It should have been impregnable. The humans didn't attack it, instead they went around it. They cut off the supply routes. They jammed communications. They waited. By day 5, the Jathir troops on the mountain surrendered. Not because they were beaten in combat, but because they had no food, no ammunition, and no orders. Chapter 27. The human voice explained. Siege warfare. Sometimes the best way to take a position is to not take it. Let time and necessity do the work. Krathor had enough. He ordered his fleet to engage the human ships directly. In space, he had the advantage. Superior numbers, proven tactics. The human fleet met them head-on. For 5 minutes, it was a traditional space battle. Ships maneuvering, firing, dodging. The Jathir began to push forward, sensing victory. Then the human fleet did something impossible. They disappeared. Not literally. They activated stealth systems that shouldn't have existed. The Jathir sensors could barely track them. Chapter 34. Elena's voice came over the comm. Submarine warfare. We learned this from conflicts on our oceans. If your enemy can't find you, they can't fight you. The human ships attacked from unexpected angles. They used the planet's gravity well to slingshot around at high speed. They coordinated their fire with mathematical precision, targeting weak points in Jothir's shields. But they didn't destroy the ships. They disabled them. Weapon systems offline. Engines damaged but functional. Crews alive but unable to fight. "We're not trying to kill you," Elena said. "We're trying to teach you. Do you understand yet?" Krathor's fleet was in disarray. 40% of his ships were disabled. His ground forces were trapped in defensive positions, running low on supplies, and he still couldn't predict what the humans would do next. He had lost battles before. He had retreated before, but he had never been lectured before. On the 10th day, the human fleet surrounded his flagship. They didn't fire. They just waited. Elena appeared on his screen again. "Warlord Krathor, we've demonstrated 34 different military doctrines from our history. We've shown you tactics from dozens of different human conflicts, and we haven't even used our modern weapons yet. Everything you've seen is based on technology and strategy that's at least 2,000 years old." She leaned forward, her face serious. "Here's what you need to understand. We didn't invent these tactics because we're cruel. We invented them because we fought each other for so long that we had to keep innovating just to survive. Every tactic you've seen today cost us millions of lives to learn. We paid for this knowledge in blood. Our own blood." Krathor said nothing. What could he say? "We're offering you a choice," Elena continued. "Withdraw now. Take your ships and go. Tell the Dominion that humanity is not worth the cost. We'll return to our peace and you'll return to your empire." "And if I refuse?" Krathor asked, though his voice lacked conviction. Elena's smile was sad. Then we moved to chapter 35. Totalvar. No restraint, no mercy, no demonstration. Just the full weight of 3,000 years of military innovation applied with modern technology and AI coordination. She paused. "We really hope you don't make us do that." Krathor looked around his bridge, at his officers who were battered and exhausted, at his damage reports showing 40% of his fleet disabled, at the casualty lists from the ground forces, and he realized something that made his blood run cold. The humans had been holding back. Everything they'd done, every tactic they'd shown, every doctrine they'd demonstrated, it had all been done with minimal casualties on both sides. They'd disabled his ships, not destroyed them. They'd trapped his ground forces, not slaughtered them. They'd been teaching him. And the lesson was simple. You don't want to fight us for real. For the first time in his long military career, Warlord Krathor felt something he'd never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death. Fear of understanding. He finally understood what the humans had been trying to tell him. They hadn't stopped fighting because they were weak. They'd stopped fighting because they were too strong. And now he had to decide. Learn from the demonstration or face the real thing. Warlord Krathor stood alone in his private quarters. Outside, his damaged fleet waited for his decision. His officers expected him to continue fighting. The Dominion expected victory. Pride demanded that he not surrender to a species that had been at peace for 3,000 years. But pride was for those who hadn't seen the truth. He pulled up the battle data on his personal screen, scrolled through the recordings, watched as humans dismantled his forces using tactics from their ancient history. Every move calculated. Every strike measured. Every casualty minimized. They could have destroyed his entire fleet in the first day. The analysis made that clear. Their AI systems alone could have overwhelmed his ship's defenses. But they hadn't, because they were teaching him. A message came through on his personal comm, not official channels, a private transmission. Warlord Krathor, this is Dr. Marcus Chen. I'd like to speak with you. Just us. No politics, no games. Krathor accepted the call. The human appeared on screen, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He was sitting in what looked like a museum surrounded by ancient weapons. I know what you're feeling right now, Marcus said quietly. Confusion, anger, maybe even shame. I've seen those emotions before, in the faces of humans who first learned their military history. You know nothing of what I feel, Krathor growled. Don't I? Marcus gestured to the weapons around him. I've spent my entire life studying human warfare. Do you know what the hardest part of my job is? Not learning about the tactics or the weapons. It's learning about the people who use them, the soldiers who thought they were fighting for honor, for glory, for their nations. and then discovering that their glory cost millions of lives. He leaned forward. You're a warrior, Krathor. I can see that. You've fought honorably your entire career. You believe in strength, in courage, in victory. Those are not bad things, but humans used to believe in those things too, until we learned the cost. Your people chose weakness, Krathor said. Marcus laughed. It was a bitter sound. Is that what you think? Let me tell you a story. 3,000 years ago, at the end of the final wars, the last two human factions faced each other. Each had enough weapons to destroy the other completely. Each had AI systems that could coordinate perfect strikes. Each had soldiers ready to die for victory. He paused, looking at something off-screen, and then they both stopped. At the same moment. Do you know why? Because both sides realized that victory would mean nothing if there was nobody left to enjoy it. That's not weakness. That's wisdom purchased with 3 billion lives. Krathor said nothing. You've seen what we can do, Marcus continued, and that was us being gentle. That was us using old tactics and older weapons. If you continue this war, you'll see what modern humans can do when we stop teaching and start fighting. And I promise you, it's not a lesson anyone survives. The transmission ended. Krathor stood silent for a long time. Then he called his senior officers to the bridge. We're withdrawing, he said. The shock on their faces was immediate. Sir, we can't surrender to... We're not surrendering, Krathor interrupted. We're learning. There's a difference. He activated the fleet-wide comm. All ships begin withdrawal procedures. We're leaving this system. Ambassador Elena received the notification within minutes. The Jathir fleet was powering down weapons and preparing to leave. She felt the tension drain from her shoulders. Thank God, she whispered. Jin Park, working beside her, looked up. You didn't think we'd win? Oh, we'd win, Elena said. That was never in doubt. I was afraid of what we'd have to do to win if they didn't back down. Nobody wants to see humans at full military capability. Not even humans. She sent a message to Krathor's flagship. Warlord, before you leave, there's something I want you to know. That smile you've been seeing on human faces, it wasn't arrogance. It was relief. Relief? Krathor's voice came back, puzzled. Relief that you gave us a way out, Elena explained. You asked for a demonstration. You gave us rules to fight by. That meant we could show you what we are without having to become what we were. You gave us permission to be scary instead of being monsters. Thank you for that. There was a long pause. I don't understand. Elena smiled, but this time it was genuine. 3,000 years ago, we stopped being warriors and started being people who remembered being warriors. That's a delicate balance. Every day we choose to remember but not to return. You almost made us return. That would have been bad for everyone. You, us, the entire galaxy. I will tell the Dominion about you, Krathor said. I will tell them that humanity is not to be disturbed. We'd appreciate that, Elena said. Safe travels, Warlord. The Jathir fleet departed. Within hours, the news spread across the galaxy. The mighty Dominion had withdrawn without conquering a single human world. Other species began to reconsider their assumptions about the peaceful humans. 10 years passed. The Museum of Human Conflict received more visitors than ever before. Species from across the galaxy came to see the weapons that had defeated the Jathir Dominion. They came to learn about human military history. Dr. Marcus Chen, now quite elderly, still gave tours. People ask me why we keep these weapons, he told a group of alien students. Why we don't just destroy them and forget. The answer is simple. We keep them as a reminder. A young Jathir in the group raised a claw. A reminder of your power. A reminder of our shame, Marcus corrected. Every weapon in this museum represents human beings killing other human beings. Every tactic we perfected was perfected on ourselves. We were so good at war because we practiced on each other for thousands of years. He walked slowly through the exhibits. We don't keep these weapons to intimidate anyone. We keep them because forgetting would be dangerous. If we forget what we're capable of, we might do it again. The tour ended. As the aliens left, a little human girl approached Marcus. She was holding her grandmother's hand. "Mr. Chen, I'm supposed to ask you a question for my school project." "Of course, dear, what's the question?" "Why do humans smile when they talk about war?" "My teacher says it's weird." Marcus knelt down, his old knees creaking. He looked at the child with gentle eyes. "We smile because we're proud," he said. "Not proud of fighting, proud of stopping. Every day for 3,000 years we could have gone back to war. Every day we chose not to. That choice, made over and over, is something to smile about." The girl thought about this. "But what if someone makes us fight again?" "Then we'll show them why we stopped," Marcus said. "And then we'll stop again. Because that's who we are now. We're not warriors anymore. We're people who know how to be warriors and choose not to be. That's much harder and much better." The girl smiled and ran off with her grandmother. Marcus stood alone in the museum for a moment. Around him, the weapons waited silently. Tanks that could level cities, aircraft that could rule the skies, AI systems that could coordinate planet-wide assaults, all of them silent, all of them waiting. He thought about the Jathir, spreading the word about humanity across the galaxy. He thought about the other species who would inevitably test them someday. He thought about the long peace and how fragile it was. But mostly he thought about the choice. The daily, constant, difficult choice to remember, but not return. To be capable, but not active. To be strong enough to be gentle. That was humanity's greatest victory. Not the battles they'd won, but the war they'd chosen to end. He turned off the lights and locked the museum door. Behind him in the darkness, the weapons waited patiently. They had waited 3,000 years. They could wait longer. Somewhere. In space, on a Jathir warship heading home, Krathor sat in his quarters writing his final report. He'd thought about the demonstration for 10 years, replaying every moment, analyzing every human choice. Finally, he understood. The humans hadn't been showing off their strength. They'd been showing him their restraint. Every tactic demonstrated, every doctrine explained, every casualty avoided. It was all proof that they didn't want to fight. That they were strong enough to be kind. He finished his report with a simple recommendation. Leave them alone. Not because we can't defeat them, we cannot, but because disturbing their peace would be the greatest crime the Dominion could commit. They chose to set aside their weapons. Let us honor that choice by never forcing them to pick them up again. The report was filed. The Dominion Council read it. And quietly, humanity was added to a very short list. Species that must not be disturbed. On Earth, people went about their lives. They farmed and built and created art. They fell in love and raised children. They argued about politics and laughed at jokes. They lived the peaceful lives that 3 billion dead had paid for with their sacrifice. And every day they chose peace again. Because that choice, renewed each morning for 3,000 years and counting, was what made them truly formidable. Not the weapons they'd built, not the wars they'd won, but the war they'd chosen to end, and stay ended, no matter how good they were at fighting it. That was humanity's real power, and that's why they smiled. They smiled because choosing peace when you're good at war is the hardest victory of all, and they'd been winning that victory for 3,000 years.